The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good evening and welcome to this House of Musicians with your host, singer-songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board right now, send us an email. Our email address is thishouseofmusicians@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your host of this House of Musicians, Barry Smith.
Hey, welcome to this House of Musicians radio show, folks. All you fine listeners, we hope you enjoy the next hour with us as we do our small part to help promote musicians, bands, and of course, venues. Gary DeBurgh, how are you, my friend?
Thank you, sir. I'm fine and looking forward to tonight's guest.
Yes, man. Tonight I had the honor of speaking with Chris de Burgh on November the 9th at 11:30 a.m. Of course, he's on a tight schedule. He lives in Ireland, 5 hours ahead, so he couldn't do a live show. Gary, it's our very first pre-taped show in about 80 shows. So I'm absolutely stoked. I mean, all the artists we've had on the show have been wonderful. We've all had great conversations with them all. They're all equally wonderful and just stoked to be doing the show all just in general all together here, Gary. So yeah, absolutely amazed to reach out. Thanks to Eric Elper for sending me the contact for Chris de Burgh. Chris, let me just read for the folks out there listening a quick bio here. I did have, like I say, the honor of talking to him for about 30 minutes. So we're going to play that interview in a little bit here, but let me just tell you that Christopher J. Davidson, alias Chris de Burgh, was born in Argentina on October the 15th in 1948. He is the son of Charles Davison, a British diplomat and Irish secretary. Maeve Emily de Burgh, his childhood was rich in travel and experience due to his father's diplomatic and engineering work. He grew up in different countries such as Malta, Nigeria, Czar. When he was 12 years old, Davison family moved to Emerald Island, Ireland. And Chris still lives there with his wife, Diane, and their 3 children, Rosanna, hubby, and Michael. Chris de Burgh in 1960, his grandfather, General Sir Eric de Burgh, bought an old castle called Bargy Castle, which originally was built in the 12th century. After the Davidsons renovated the castle, they opened it up as half-year holiday hotel for families. Chris held his first concert in this castle, and he used it to play and sing for the guests in the evenings. He learned to play guitar by learning by the doing method. He studied English and French at the famous Trinity College in Dublin. This gave him ideas for his own lyrics. He began writing songs while studying French and English at Trinity College in Dublin, where he earned his Master of Arts degree in French, English, and History. He also attended Marlborough College in England. In 1971, Chris moved to London to pursue his music career. He was singing in a hamburger restaurant and a hairdresser shop. He was looking for a job and was offered by a friend to sing in a recently opened restaurant in Dublin called Captain America's. He played background music for the dining guests. In 1974, he signed a deal with A&M Records and supported Supertramp in their Crime of the Century tour. During this time, he changed his stage name to Chris de Burgh, and in 1975, he was ready to release his first album, Far Beyond These Castle Walls, which is kind of ironic that he basically kind of grew up in a castle, Gary, and here he is. His first album's called Far Beyond These Castle Walls.
Excellent.
His first international success happened in 1975 with the song Turning Around. It was renamed Flying, and it remained number one in Brazil for more than 17 weeks and sold over 500,000 records. His next album was Spanish Train and Other Stories, and once again, a track, A Superman Came Traveling, off of the album became a continuing hit. But by this time in the United Kingdom, as a Christmas radio hit. But the real success from the album was the track Patricia, the Stripper, which is still requested by the audience at his concerts. In 1980, Chris's album Eastern Wind became one of the biggest selling albums of all time in Norway. In 1984, Chris released his eighth album, Man on the Line, which included one of the most famous songs, High on Emotion. It reached number one in 10 European countries. He performs this song at most concerts since then. Man on the Line became a top 30 album in the United Kingdom and the United States and 20 other countries. Chris de Burgh in 1986, he released the album Into the Light, which included The Lady in Red. It became a worldwide hit, and Chris received gold and platinum albums in many different countries. The Lady in Red reached number one in the United Kingdom and 24 other countries worldwide, and also number three in the United States. Into the Light earned platinum in Norway, South Africa, and Greece, double platinum in Swiss and England, 3 times platinum in Ireland and Canada. It received gold in the United States, New Zealand, Sweden, Denmark, and Belgium as well. The Lady in Red remains one of the most played songs, and later became the recipient of 6 annual ASCAP, Association of Composers and Publishers Awards, presented to acknowledge the track as one of the top 20 most played songs in the United States in a period of 1 year. This album also contains the track Say Goodbye to All, which continued the story of Borderline On, the Getaway album from 1982. I'm going to skip ahead here a bit, Gary. And Chris now owns his own recording label called Ferrymen Productions. Chris de Burgh was signed with A&M Records for 30 years before the launch of Ferrymen Productions in 2004. Ferrymen Productions first released the single The Words I Love You, and later the album The Road to Freedom. Chris de Burgh released his next album, The Story Man, in October 2006. This new album contains 12 new tracks, and Chris de Burgh has written a short story for each song. These stories set the scene and expand upon the lyrics with detail, color, and atmosphere. On March 2006, Chris de Burgh was appointed the ambassador to counter malnutrition and for achieving the United Nations Millennium Development Goals by CISRIISP. Chris de Burgh was also appointed an ambassador for the CISRI in support of UN MDGs. Chris de Burgh released The Hands of Man, his 20th studio album, Original New Material. His new album finds Chris maintaining focus as a singer-songwriter, unique vision and craft. On the new record, his intention was to reflect who he is today and the things he thinks about. Now, I want to skip ahead here a bit to the album, the album he's promoting right now, called The Legend of Robin Hood, which is his 27th studio album. It was released on September the 21st, and it includes 23 tracks It includes a new reworked version of Light a Fire from his 1982 album, The Getaway. The Legend of Robin Hood album emerged from his involvement in Robin Hood, a stage musical about the infamous Sherwood Forest nobleman and his band of outlaws. Chris was invited to contribute storylines and melodies to the musical, which produced later during 2021 in Fall to Germany. During the 45 years of his career, Chris de Burgh has been awarded with more than, get a load of this, Gary, 200 gold and platinum sales awards.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Wow.
Also, 200 gold and platinum sales awards. Also, some royalty and world leaders have joined to his fans. He has so many fans all around Europe, Asia, South America, North America. Chris has repeatedly sold out tours in many countries around the world, such as United States, Japan, United Kingdom, Germany, Scandinavia, Australia, South Africa, of course, Canada, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and the Far East. Now, this is something that's pretty moving. As of today, Chris has composed 27 studio albums. He's approaching 3,000 concerts worldwide and LP sales that sold for more than 45 million copies. Not bad for a guy starting off with a guitar in a hamburger joint.
Man, phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that he's had such an amazing career, and you know what? What an absolute gentleman to talk to on the phone. I was just really happy. I asked him about his writing process, and he slid on over to a piano, which folks you will hear here in the interview that we're going to play very soon here. He slid on over to the piano and played a couple of notes and sang a little bit. Definitely a very cheery and happy guy, and he was an absolute gentleman during the interview. So, Gary, why don't we go ahead and let the folks hear the interview that I did with him on November the 9th?
You got it. Coming up right now.
All right, folks. Right here on this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101. Hi, Chris de Burgh. How are you? It's a pleasure to have you on the show this day.
Absolutely perfect for me, because I'm talking to you now from the hills of Wicklow in beautiful Ireland, where, as we all know, it rains all night and the sun shines all day. That's why it's so green.
Absolutely. What a place. And what's the weather like there today, Chris?
Today it's sunny, and we're going into the fall, what you call over there, and I never forget the beautiful colors that Canada has shown me in this time of year and in the subsequent weeks. I've been to your country so many times, and I've been to Toronto many, many times. It's a city I know extremely well. Spadina, some of the best Chinese restaurants there is. I was mentioning earlier before we came on air that there used to be a favorite of mine called Peter's Chungking, which closed down. In fact, one of the first times I ever went to Toronto was I performed in the Elmo, which is on Spadina. And I had a Canadian band for many years, and most of them lived in that city. And I used to take the tram on Queen Street. I used to cross to the beaches. And I always used to laugh. There was another Chinese restaurant that was very famous. I don't know if it's still there. They used to call it the Goof. That was because the sign, do you remember the Goof? It used to say good food, and a couple of the letters have been disappeared. So it's called the Goof. Yeah, I love the city. I spent a lot of time there. I even recorded an album there called Eastern Wind back in the late 70s.
Absolutely. And 27 solo albums, or 27 albums that you've done now is so impressive. You had such a wonderful music career. We were talking about Canada. The one thing about Canada is the fall colors. We definitely get, we live in Southern Ontario, as you know, we definitely get all four seasons here. And my wife is from Texas, and they don't get that there. So she's just overwhelmed by the beautiful four seasons that we get here in Southern Canada. So
I'm sure she does. I'm sure she's also familiar with the cold weather. I think one of the times I was recently in Toronto, the temperature dipped to about like -30 or something like that.
Oh, no.
And I actually, again, one of the early visits that I went to in Toronto in, God, it would have been the late 70s. I couldn't get over how you could go outside and you'd wear everything that God gave you to put on your head, your clothes, and then you'd go into the underground malls and all that. And it was so hot there, I think, what do you do with all this clothing? It was really strange, because coming from Ireland, we live in a temperate climate, but it can get cold, but not nearly as cold as that. But then we don't have the hot summers you've had. And I've had many, many times going up to the northern Ontario, to the lakes and the cottages that people have. And that's a hot summer. You guys you got kind of the best of everything, a bit of skiing in the winter and then hot summers and swimming in the lakes and stuff.
Absolutely. You definitely put all of our winter clothes in a separate closet for the summer, and then we have to dig them all out in the fall to get ready for the cold weather to come. So you always have to have a spare area in the house to put all your winter clothes if you have a family. It's pretty fun.
Spare room or two, yeah. Probably a spare house.
Well,
for the clothes.
Absolutely. Have you been doing any traveling as of yet? I think you've been back to doing a couple of shows recently to promote the new album, correct?
Yeah, the last tour we did was ending on the 4th of December 2019. And then, because my industry was the first to close down, and it's going to be the last to open up again, I counted the days. I did a private show in Cologne, Germany, a solo thing, and I counted 590 days since I was actually permitted by government rules to actually sing again. It's a bit like saying to a dentist or a doctor or a chef, sorry, that's it, you can't do your job until we let you know you can. And so it's been very tough, not just for me, but for so many people in my profession, the very skilled professional people who do, the sound technicians, the lighting technicians, the road crew, and they've all been suffering very badly. So for me, I just did 8 solo shows in Germany recently. That was fantastic to actually get out there and sing for people. And I did a couple of songs from the new album, The Legend of Robin Hood, which was a great thing to be able to do.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that soon here you'll be out touring back at it again. Let's talk about the new album again, 27th album that you've done. Let's talk about The Legend of Robin Hood. It's quite an inspiring story, and I know that you're sending a positive message with this album. I know you even honored the doctors and nurses and all the people on the front lines. You've honored them in one of the videos on your Facebook, but I'm interested to know how you got involved with doing this new album.
There is a little town in Germany called Fulda, Fulda, which I've been going to perform in many, many years. I love it. It's what's called the Altstadt, the old town, and it's one of those really traditional, beautiful little German places. And they have a company there called Spotlight Productions, who've mounted 8 successful musicals that have not only been seen in Germany, but also in Austria and I believe Switzerland. And they contacted me 4 years ago and said, would I be interested in co-writing a musical? Now, I was naive enough to think, just write a bunch of songs and that's that. Writing for a musical production is completely different. And I learned a new skill. It took me quite a while because to be blunt, nowadays you can't just, like in My Fair Lady, for example, people talking and then go, da, 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 da. They can't. Nowadays, if you look at something like Les Miserables, for example, people will talk and then they start, in my song, one of them is called Falling in Love All Over Again. In a musical production, they'll start talking and then she'll say, I never knew that you heard what I said. And then it becomes the song. So they also knew that I had an interest in medieval history. I was brought up in a 12th century castle, and that I had a relative called Hubert de Burgh, who was the chief lawmaker to King Richard Coeur de Lion and subsequently his brother, King John, and features heavily in a Shakespeare play of the same name, King John. And he was a good guy, actually, but he was the second most powerful man in England. So they threw all this stuff at me and I went, okay, I'll give this a shot. And I got very much involved with the storyline because, to be perfectly honest, we don't know if this guy even existed. Barry, the legend of Robin Hood, the idea of robbing from the rich to give to the poor. I mean, it's a wonderful idea. And that's why I think it persists to this day. Nowadays, the taxman robs from everybody and keeps it for themselves. Now, back in the day, we don't know if the guy exists. So we could create a story, but you have to stick to the principles, which is if you stop 100 people on Bluren and College or Bluren Avenue or wherever it is, you will find their response to who is Robin Hood or who was him. They will go with the robbing from the rich thing, and then they'll go for the Sheriff of Nottingham, the evil Sheriff of Nottingham, and then you'll have Maid Marian and the Outlaws and the Merry Men and a few other ancillary characters. But the actual story itself, you can create your own vision of that. And for me, I wanted to take Robin as a reluctant hero because, to be perfectly honest, heroes are not born. They are put in a situation they suddenly have to react. For example, I use this as an example of instant heroism. Last year, a young woman fell into the River Thames from Waterloo Bridge in central London. And immediately, two young men stripped down and jumped in to save her. During that, one of the two young men drowned. The other survived and saved the young woman. Now, I don't know if you or I could react like that, but I certainly wouldn't have the courage to do that. But I think a long-term hero is something where they're in every community. People that I'm sure you know there in Toronto, there will be people in local communities who, for example, out there near the airport, maybe they don't like the runways or the noise, or there will be people standing up and they will get reviled as well. And I think one of them, for me, on a worldwide basis, is this young girl, Greta Thunberg, who as a schoolgirl said, "I've had enough of this. Our generation are reaping the dreadful rewards of your generation in front of us, who've left this global warming as a serious problem. And I'm going to stand up for this." And now she's got millions of people who admire her. And she's even, luckily, attracted the attention of Trump, who hates her, which is a wonderful thing to have. What a moron he is, designing the things that are right in front of our eyes. So she, for me, is a hero. So for Robin Hood, and we looked at very carefully at the story of how it develops. And I don't know if you are aware of this, but I've written a book called The Legend of Robin Hood and recorded it for audio. It's available on Amazon and Spotify. And yes. I actually recorded it. I did the voices. It was great because I could put on the voices of a number of the characters. For example, we have the wedding feast. Robin is 19 years old. He's an obnoxious teenager. He's drunk at his own wedding, and he doesn't want to marry this 13-year-old girl called Marianne. I mean, for God's sake, they've been stuck together in an enforced marriage. And during the ceremony, everybody's drinking and there's carousing and there's minstrels playing and so on. And then the father stands up, the Earl of Huntingdon, and he says, "I now call upon my son Robin to say a few words to our distinguished guest here today." And Robin shouts, "Oh!" But then he goes upstairs to do his marital duty, and he sees this poor young girl terrified. And then we see another side of his character, compassionate and empathetic, and he sits down, looks at her for a while, and then he goes and holds her hands and holds her tight till she stops shaking and says, "It's okay, I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to be gone in the morning, and I will go and fight on King Richard's crusade." And he doesn't touch her. And then that night, she falls in love with him a little bit, for his kindness. And so years later, that whole thing comes out again.
Absolutely. And now you are also a little familiar with this because you did almost the same thing with Moonfleet, correct? So you had a little bit of experience going into this, although it would still be a whole different thing for you, but you had a little bit of experience with Moonfleet.
Quite right, Barry. And Moonfleet is, for your listeners, is a story that was written by an English writer who actually was a writer, writer manqué. He didn't mean to be a writer, but he wrote this story called Moonfleet, which is a wonderful tale of smugglers and pirates and the ghost of Blackbeard and a young lad called John Trenchard and who sees the light in the graveyard, and he's been told, no, that's Blackbeard's ghost, when in fact it's smugglers. And it's a book I read as a child, and then subsequent, it's not just for children, it's adults as well. And it really inspired my imagination. And I had to write that album, I had big lists of things and a big storyboard that I went from. Now this is what happens here, and this is what happens there. And so I did learn from that experience to bring into the Robin Hood. As you point out, this one big major difference is that there was no story to rely on, so I had to rely on my own imagination. And what I like about that imagination is, Barry, if you have children or ever told children a story, you will note that the children very rarely look at the storyteller. They just look up into the sky, they look at the ceiling, they look at the wall. They're allowing their imagination to do the job. And that's what I love about making albums like The Legend of Robin Hood, letting your imagination do the work and come into my vision. And then you have your own pictures, you can have your own colors, you can paint the story as you wish.
Absolutely. And you have 23 tracks on this album, correct?
That's right, 23. One of them is an overture, which covers a lot of the melody that's coming up. And there are favorite tracks of mine. There's one of them which really stands out, which goes a very positive feel. And curiously enough, people have asked me, did I write this about the pandemic and the times we're living through? And I wrote it before this. It's called Live Life, Live Well. And it's a song that you're looking, I can't, again, people say, how did you write Spanish Train? Well, I know I wrote Spanish Train because I was on a train going through Spain at the time, so I could actually refer to something that was happening to me, and then my imagination took over. But a lot of other songs, I have no idea where they arrive from. And this one, the first line, which is, I am looking for me, said the man that I know. I don't know where to begin. That kind of, what the hell is that? And I went, ooh, I like that. And I took it on and then made the song into what it is now.
Absolutely. I love the fact that Chris de Burgh is singing on our radio show. That is awesome. Thank you for that. Chris, why don't we play Live Life, Live Well, so all the folks out there can listen to this song, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome, folks. I have Chris de Burgh on tonight's episode, and we're going to listen to his song Live Life, Live Well off his new album, The Legend of Robin Hood, right here on this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.
Said a man that I know, I don't know where to begin. I see in the mirror that there's somebody there, but I am not sure if it's me or it's him. I am looking for me, said the man that I know. I'm not sure how to explain. Sometimes it feels that I am only alive. When I'm out with my friends, I see me through their eyes. But oh, don't worry, everything will be fine when you just live life, live well. Take your time, look after yourself, give love, give well. Looking for love, said the man that I know, but I have been there before. Love is an ocean where we sink or we swim. In spite of the dangers, we keep jumping in. So I told him, my friend, there are no guarantees how things will work out in the end. One day she'll tell you you're the love of her life. Take it from me, that can change overnight. But oh, don't worry, everything will be fine if you just live life, live well. Take your time, look after yourself, give love, give well. after yourself. Give love, give well. The only way to get there is to start by loving yourself. The only way to get there is to start by loving yourself.
Hey there, it's Ian from Five Paddles Brewing Company. We're located in Whitby, Ontario, just off of Highway 401. Since we've opened, we've brewed over 300 different styles of beers. Whether you like lagers, stouts, IPAs, or flavored beers, we've always got something new and intense available at our tasting room and for take-home in cans and bottles. If you're not sure what to get, we've got friendly and knowledgeable staff to help you out. We've been lucky enough to collaborate with Harley-Davidson Riders of Canada to make a beer that raises money for Sick Kids Charity. Proceeds from every can purchased is donated directly to sick kids. Check out our online store at fivepaddlesbrewing.ca to see what we have available today. We have free local delivery to your door and more options available for the rest of the province. We're always adding new beer to our online store at fivepaddlesbrewing.ca. If you wanted to come down in person to pick up your craft beer, we're located at 1390 Hopkins Street in Whitby. It's a great place to have a cold beer in a relaxed setting. Help out a great charity and drink some great craft beer from Five Paddles Brewing Company.
At Roofsmith Canada, we have over 30 years of professional experience, offering free quotes on your flat roofing, shingled roofing, and repair concerns. We offer a 5-page quote package, which includes 2 pages of references for your peace of mind, all at very competitive prices. And for all of our roofing jobs, we use only the absolute best quality roofing materials, bar none. Servicing the Durham, Clarington, Toronto, Peterborough, Port Hope, Cobourg, and surrounding areas, our employees are friendly, courteous, and we maintain a no-smoking policy on your roof. Roofsmith Canada is fully insured, and owner Barry Smith is working at each and every job and will service your roof as if it were his own. Cleanup is always immaculate, so what are you waiting for? Please call Barry today at 416-917-8049. That's 416-917-8049. Be sure to request to join our Facebook group to view all of our jobs that we have completed and read reviews from very satisfied customers. Email us, roofsmithcanada@hotmail.com. Roofsmith Canada, a proud owner-operator company that always allows you to contact us even after the job is done. At Classy Chassis and Cycles, we have the absolute best motorcycles available for sale and the best live music for your entertainment. It doesn't get any better than this. Get your motorcycle serviced by our V-Twin Performance Specialists. And always 100 motorcycles in stock. Hungry while looking? Try our delicious on-site food truck meal specials. It's all happening at Classy Chassis and Cycles. Call us today at 888-292-8305. That's 888-292-8305. Or visit our website, usedhd.ca, or send us an email. Our email address is info@usedhd.ca. Classy Chassis and Cycles. Motorcycles, music, and food. All for the motorcyclists in your life.
Hi, this is Sam Reed from Glass Tiger, and you're listening to This House of Musicians radio show at Reality Radio 101.
Did you know that on top of listening to This House of Musicians live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern right here on realityradio101.com, that you can now watch This House of Musicians TV on YouTube? Videos of our in-person interviews with Canadian music industry legends and insiders are always being added. Podcasts of all of our past radio shows are also being added, just in case you missed one. So visit YouTube and search for This House of Musicians TV, and don't forget to hit subscribe.
Hi, I'm Al Joines from Discovery, Toronto's independent music showcase, available exclusively through SoundCloud, and you're listening to This House of Musicians with your rockin', blues talkin', man with a plan, Barry Smith on Reality Radio 101.
Took away your lovely smile, so that's been gone now for a while.
Welcome back to This House of Musicians radio show with your host, singer-songwriter, and founder of the band Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101. Join our Facebook page, This House of Musicians, and our Instagram page at THOM.
Made you look the other way.
And now, back to your host of This House of Musicians, Barry Smith.
Across my broken heart, and I promise to be true.
Hey, Bear, if you're there, we're having a little trouble with the audio there. I'm just trying to work that out if you want to come back on the air.
Yeah, sure. I'm right here. Absolutely love the interview so far. I love how Chris talks about being in Canada and how much he loves Toronto and even recorded an album here. I think he visits frequently. And just stoked to know that he cares so much about our city. So amazing to hear that. And later on in the interview here, folks, we're going to listen to him. I asked him about his writing process, and we're going to listen to him, like I say, edge on over to the piano and play some live stuff. So it was definitely
it was amazing. I think it was a great interview. Go ahead.
Fun interview to do with him, Gary. Carry on.
Yeah, we're back. We're back. I think we got it.
Okay, perfect. Folks, here is the second half of the interview that I did with Chris de Burgh, again, on November the 9th. Well, Chris, that is quite the song. I would like for you to talk to me about it and tell me how that came about. Such a positive inspiration for the world to hear. Please tell me where that song came from.
Well, it came kind of out of nowhere. The lines just emerged, and this does happen from time to time. I once wrote a song called "Don't Play the Ferryman," and I don't know how that started. It just sort of weirdly came out. I think in a song, certainly in my head, if you can imagine for a moment that my head is like a garden. Sometimes seeds float in the wind and they land there, and then they grow into something. And then other times I deliberately plant a seed in there. For example, on my album, which album? I can't remember, a recent album, a song called "The Keeper of the Keys," which is as relevant now as it was 4 or 5 years ago. And it's about allowing women what's happening in Afghanistan right now to women. They had freedom to have education and so on, and now it's been snatched away from them from the Taliban. but by the Taliban. And this song, Keeper of the Keys, it's about that very thing, that the subjugation of women is absolutely and utterly wrong. They are equal people on our planet. You have no choice when you're conceived in the womb. It's not your choice to be a boy or a girl. And I think it's outrageous. So that was the seed I planted in the ground. But with Live Life, Live Well, I think if I work backwards, the very last line is the one that I stick with, which is, the only way to get there is to start by loving yourself. And for me, that is my own personal kind of mantra. Maybe that's what emerged from my subconscious. I don't think you can, put it another way, if you're in a room with a lot of people in the room, and there are always people who are magnets, not because they shout the loudest or the most beautiful or handsome. There's just something about them that draws people in to their circle, their aura. And I think they are usually the people who are so comfortable with their own skin. And they actually, I mean, it's not supposed to be something wrong to love yourself, but look in the mirror sometimes, and I urge people to do this occasionally. Don't look at the person looking back at you, just say, I love you, and you can't actually transfer that to other people properly unless you start with yourself. And that's my particular feeling anyway.
And I agree. You have to love yourself and be positive the way you are in order for, before you can love other people. And your positivity will definitely reflect them and shine on them. And I'm sure you've done that to millions of people around the world through your music. Let's talk about, Chris, I want to ask you about your writing process. For me, I will pick up my phone and maybe an acoustic guitar. I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, but for me, I'd pick up my acoustic guitar and record a couple of riffs on my phone, and then maybe come back to it a couple of weeks later. If I still like the riff, by the way, I probably have 500 riffs on my phone. If I still like it, I will turn it into a song. What's your creative writing process?
Well, I'm going to bring you over to my piano here and see.
Yes, please. All right.
Let me think about how is my process. Well, sometimes I will start with just a few words. God, you got me. It's a rainy night in Paris, and the harbor lights alone. She must leave her love in Paris before the winter snow. Now that started with the sound of the actual chords moving. And another one I'm going to do here, which I have a guitar at hand, but it's down across the other side of my studio, so I'll do it on the piano. But I had this idea of somewhere in the 18th century of a cottage, and the guy's, he's mourning the fact that his son has gone off to fight in a war. And I had this kind of music, and it turned into a song of mine called The Road to Freedom. I feel the wind blowing through my doorway. It's telling me that the summer's gone, and the winter waits in shadow, waiting with the storm. And that the moment an idea begins, the movie begins in my head. And then once I see the film, I can go back and I can color it. And I used that word before, and I can expand it, and I can then understand what's going on, and hopefully can convey that to somebody else.
Absolutely. And your imagination is incredibly vast, Chris. To be able to just pull songs like that from historic times and whatnot and create your own kind of Robin Hood story, it's just remarkable. I want to ask you, now you've traveled all around the world, of course, playing your music from country to country. If you've written songs in other countries, do they inspire you to write? Different places and different places you've seen have inspired you to write songs, and if so, are the songs different from each other?
Very much so, yeah. Although I find writing on the road quite difficult, but I do bring back memories. And one place that's been really, really good to me, and it's been reciprocated, is Lebanon, who are going through another crisis at the moment. But at the end of the Civil War, back in the early 90s, it was still a dangerous place to go, but I was invited to go there to perform with the band. My lads from Canada, by the way, the boys from Toronto. And we performed there two shows. up in the hills at a university. And since then, for me, it's been a love affair with the people of Beirut and Lebanon. And I always can tell, and there's Lebanese people in the audience. I know there are quite a few of them actually in Ontario, but they are very enthusiastic. And I wrote a song. I'd been to a restaurant with the band for dinner one night, and it was on top. You can imagine, top floor, there was little fountains and there's flowers, and the place was full of beautiful young people, young men, young women, and they just gorgeous looking people, and it was their time. But here's the thing that really struck me. They were all growing up during this terrible civil war with so many people murdered and killed, and they must have been terrified. So I wrote this song called Lebanese Night. And one of the lines is, and did you go to your bed with a sweet lullaby and the sound of the guns in the night? And did you run for your life from the hell that came down from the sky? Da, 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 da. So I was looking at them, and that it's really transformed into this song about meeting somebody, like a girl in a Lebanese restaurant, but then realizing that she would have been a child during this kind of stuff. So these things do happen, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You would be inspired by different things that happen, and it shows. That's for sure. Chris, do you ever wonder if you would like to go back to the days of the 12th century and be in Loxley, maybe be Robin Hood himself, or be during those days? Do you ever think of that?
I do think of it, and I think of the health issues and the fact that life expectancy was half of what it is today. No, I would not like to live in those days. But I'm certainly happy to think about them and imagine them. But those people who, although I'm sure most people do have a kind of wondering if in the spirit, if you believe in previous lives, was I there then? And there is one era or a situation which makes me think maybe catastrophic things do actually wind up in the DNA that you pass on to your children, whether those things are lurking like a little echo in the night. And for me, it's the First World War. And I feel as if I was there. I can feel it. I smell the murder. I can see the horror. It's not just having seen films, but I've written several songs about that. One of them was called Love of the Heart Divine, when a young man is getting ready to go to war. And as the train pulls out of the station with all the soldiers throwing their caps in the air and the band's playing, and his wife feels the first kick of the baby inside. And then I do the subsequent song on the sort of second part, when he's the young man. They all believe they're going to be home for Christmas, but it's the catastrophic time of the First World War, and he gets severely wounded in a shell hole, and then as he's dying, this little boy, 3 years old, little blonde boy, leans over to him as the blood is pouring from, saying, "Daddy, please don't die." And then wow. I can see this so powerfully. I get emotional thinking about it. It will make a great movie. And then he crawls back to the lines, and he's wounded, and they patch him up, and a year or so later they send him home. And then he winds up getting off the same train in the same train station, and it's autumn, and the leaves are blowing, and he's got a stick, and he's got a rucksack, and he's got a long greatcoat. And then he sees in the distance his wife and little boy, who runs up to him. I get emotionally. I can see this so clearly. And he says, "My daddy has come home." So these things, I wonder, are they a part of our background, part of our DNA? And maybe the story of Robin Hood is also part of our joint, everybody, because for generations, people have been telling stories about this guy, and maybe it has come through, into our modern day.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, like I say, your imagination is so vast. And it shows in all your albums. Chris, what can I say to you? I appreciate you being here. 45-year career, 27 studio albums, 3,000 concerts, and 45 million albums sold. I love your new album, The Legend of Robin Hood. I just want to thank you so much for being here, and thank you for helping build the house that we all grew up in.
Well, that's so beautiful words. Thank you, Barry. And in fact, I'm going to be performing in Toronto in the Meridian Hall, formerly the Sony Centre, on we have the 30th of April next year, God willing, and Corona allowing. But that's what I'll come back to the city I know so well.
We appreciate that. My wife and I are great concert goers. It would be a pleasure to come see you, and that's what we'll do. We'll come out and see your concert. That would be amazing. Thank you again so much for being on the show. It's much appreciated. And you take care,
Not
Chris,
at all.
and stay safe,
No.
my friend.
Thank you very much, Barry. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Wow, what an interview, Mr. Barry. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm stoked that he loves Canada and loves Toronto, and he's going to be doing a show here soon. He's was talking about Chinese places on Spadina and stuff. So that's kind of pretty cool for a guy who's a world traveler. But wasn't he an absolute gentleman, Gary? Just so outgoing and a gentleman, and just to play live on the show was kind of pretty cool too.
Oh yeah, he's he was very big in the States back in the day with Lady in Red. That was the big hit for him there. And of course that song went all around the world, phenomenal ratings, gold platinum albums. He's got a very, very interesting voice where he doesn't push his voice, he doesn't shout hoarsely, he doesn't hold back, but yet it's almost like every song he sings, it is a story, but it's poetry, and he doesn't ever seem to sing out of his range. Like Barry, you sing, I sing. Sometimes we try to hit or grasp a note that's really not in our range, but we know that's the right note for the song. And I never seen him write anything or record anything where his vocal line and his vocal melody is not in perfect concert with his voice, his range, and that to me is kind of a turn on for a vocalist, because he's not trying to do something he's not able to do, and I think we all do that. And but every vocal, every line tells a story. It's amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes when I sing, I sound like a wounded ape. So
we've all been there.
But Gary, his imagination, I mean, it just runs wild. Just you could hear during the interview stories that that he imagines, and I think I said to him before the show, before we started the interview, that he must just lay in bed at night and fall asleep imagining stories every night, and then waking up and writing about it. I mean, he's just, and you can tell, like, Don't Pay the Ferryman, Lady in Red. You could tell The Legend of Robin Hood. You could tell what kind of an imagination this guy has. It's far beyond a lot of other people's imaginations. You could just tell.
Yeah, and his imagination as he described things, and he was getting emotional. The thing is, a lot of people would say, Chris, you should actually be a writer and a director of a movie. Forget about even the score of the movie, because, as a musician, he would easily be able to figure that out, like he said, once he comes back and looks at, the play or the movie, and then he puts ideas together to write the score. However, to get the idea for the score and a movie, it seems that he should really, at this point in his life, should really start now to think about writing movies and ideas and concepts for movies. And he kind of likes things from the Middle Ages up a little bit, like wars, and that's what I notice. A lot of his music, he may differ on this, but I don't see a lot of his music very positive. It's a lot of things in the past. It's a lot of war-torn lives and idealisms. And it's about sadness, That's what I see in a lot of his music, but that's his creative mind. That's what he sees in the world.
Yeah, I think he's like singing for the underdog all the time, like writing songs for the underdog. Like, the people that can't help themselves. He's trying to send a message to other people, to help these people that can't help themselves. That's what it seems like a lot of times in his music as well.
I see that, and and we do need to help the underdogs as well, and people in life that are not as lucky or blessed as we are, and that does seem to be his go-to things. But he's for his genre that he writes and all the sadness and all the delusional things that, he wants people to think about in a good way, it's depressing, some of his stuff. It's about, people dying or relationships being broken and history that was not very good for the human race. I see that because, I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and that just seems to be his thought process. Unlike you and I, sex, drugs, rock and roll, we meet a girl, we break up, we write about a relationship, we write about, a bottle of booze, we write about a motorcycle. That doesn't seem to be his thing. You know what I mean?
It's definitely not his thing. He's, like you say, he's a storyteller.
Yeah, for sure. And it's awesome. And folks, by the way, everyone listening, we want to thank you for listening tonight, to this interview. And we just want to, again, remind you, if you want to join the Facebook page of this House of Musicians, please do. Please request to join that. And also, the Instagram page for this House of Musicians is at THOM. And at any point in time during the week, if you have any questions for Barry, you can write to him, thishouseofmusicians@gmail.com, or you can write to us here at the radio station in Studio 101@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that we forward everything to Barry.
Yes, thank you, Gary. And also, folks, there's a YouTube channel called This House of Musicians TV. I'd like for people, we don't often get a chance to talk. Of course, we're just using this time now because, of course, Chris could only talk for a half hour, being the schedule that he has. But so it's a good time to tell everybody as well that there's This House of Musicians TV on YouTube, and there's I'll tell you a couple stories about that. Ed Pilling from the band Flood was on the show, and one day I messaged him and say, would you ever consider doing a live interview? And he said, sure, come on up to the house. And so we did, and he invited, of course, his bandmate from Flood, and he also had some success himself, Greg Godovitz, up there as well. So here I go, my wife and I, and we go up to, and Dave Clayton doing the production, we go up, and Lizzie, and we go up to Ed Pilling's house, and here he is on the front driveway, with a little stage set up, not a stage, but I mean, he had bongos and he had a PA, and he sang. Him and Greg sang 3 or 4 or 5 songs. But my point here is, if you go on This House of Musicians on YouTube or This House of Musicians TV on YouTube, there's a live interview of that day. And it was just such a pleasure to go up and see these guys who are still playing and singing and sounding like they did 30, 40 years ago. And so that's something that everyone can check out as well. There's also, here's another great story. Terry Draper from the band Klaatu, who now has, so many solo albums, was releasing an album, and I invited him on the show. Of course, he came on the show, and same thing. I sent him a message, said, would you ever consider doing a live interview? Off we go up to Terry Draper's, and we're setting up in the backyard, and he's like, well, hang on, let's just do it on the pontoon boat out in the lake. So, of course, we set everything up on Terry Draper's pontoon boat. He was an absolute gentleman. It was an absolute fabulous day. And that's another live another video that we did that you can see on This House of Musicians TV. So I think, and not only that, but all our recent podcasts from, I think we're up to almost 80 shows now. But I think about 70 of them right now are on there. So if anybody is interested in listening to the past guests, and we've had so many, they're all on the YouTube channel to go listen to any podcasts of past live interviews. Again, this was our first pre-taped. It worked out very well. Gary did a great job, because I know that you're there pushing this button and cutting and putting the commercials in and coming back to Chris and then putting the song in. That's all separate for on your end, what you're doing. It wasn't all put together. So you did an amazing job at that. And it's, you learn as you go for me. And I'm realizing that a pre-tape show can work as well, just by.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for that, bud.
You're welcome. And thank you again for all our listeners hanging in there and listening to the great interview.
Absolutely, and I want to thank them as well. I also want to thank one more time Eric Elper, who sends me emails almost every day of musicians who have new material out and are looking to come on radio shows and promote their stuff. So thank you, Eric Elper. And to the listener, thank you, Gary. And to the listener, I say thank you for being here. Always dance and sing, and let the music bring your soul to the surface for all the world to see. Until next time, have a shuffle your feet kind of week, and good night. You've been listening to This House of Musicians on Reality Radio 101.
Let's ride, heading up 35. One way, we're headed at 90K.
Thank you for listening to This House of Musicians with your host, singer-songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101.